Hi guys, welcome to another video. I did a few days ago a video about what is space, and that was the first part. Now this is the second part, which I go deeper into it. Because first and always, I say most of my videos, these are my theories, these are my observations while I'm investigating those things on my own. So I made the first video, so this is the second video now, and it's about what is space. So I was trying to get down in the foundation and the essence or the principle of what is space. So I wrote here my notes down, as you know, and I have here a few words that how space can be seen. So, and you see here I prepare always some stuff here. So this is here are two people, and here is just a space, right? And I'm going into it a little bit later on. So space, what is space? So I wrote by myself a few words down how I observed it, or how I perceive space. So space for me can be seen as hope, and as you will figure out when I say what space is, you figured out that as you know, I look for similarities in different kind of fields. So as I go along with the list, you will see that space has a different function, a different definition in those different fields, what they represent as space. So space can be seen as hope. Space can be seen as an area free to move. Space can be seen as not knowing. I don't know, not knowing. Space can be seen as a moment. Space can also be seen as new, or as an extending, you extend. Space can be seen as between you and me, that space between those objects. And space can also be seen as a distance. So those are my observation, and it took a long while to thinking it through. These are for me the foundation, the essence, the principle of space, what space can be seen as. Now, space is also to be seen as nothing, that there is no structure, no reference, no forms in that space. Space is just space. And we use space in different fields in our life, and in the space in those different fields, areas, has a different meaning in those fields. So this is space, right? Now, in this space, when there is nothing, because it's a foundation, it's the essence, it's the principle, we can move freely, right? We can move freely in that space. So while we're moving in the space, we search, we look, we find, we seek, right? And while we're doing this, what I just discovered right now too, well, like 5 minutes ago before I started the video, is I think also that listening or sound, listening and sound create space. But that's my theories. I think that the listening creates space in your human body, in your mind, in the psychological field. That listening creates space in you, right? Which is here. And I also think that sound create space, right? So, as I said, space can be seen as hope, free to move around, not knowing anything. It could be a moment. It can be seen as new. It can be seen as between objects. It can be seen between a distance. Now, if you look in the if you look at space and you look what people do in the science world, like NASA and all that, what they do in the space is they try to see, to find, to look, to discover things, to find any signal, to find any hope, to find any reference, to find any structure form in the space, right? In the NASA, in the science world, what they do in space, right? But we also have space in our thoughts, and we use space, and I mentioned in the first video, but it's hard to grasp in the beginning, is your status of mind should be always empty. It should be never, your thought should never have a should not have any structure or a reference. And I will go deeper into this. Now, the state of mind should be always space. That means you have inwardly in the psychological field, I just talked about the space in the NASA world, in the science world, what they discover in the space, etc., planets and all that stuff. That space in the psychological field is the same thing. The state of mind should be always free, empty, right? But we always are occupied with things that has been thrown at us in our daily lives. You always get thrown from someone else, kind of like a challenge, or occupied with things. So if there's no space, if there is space, there's no structure, no reference, nothing. Now, if we try to discover, if we try to find something in the thought process, right, when human beings, what we look is things like when we seek, find, and try to discover things, when we analyze something in our thought process, because in the beginning there is nothing, there's just space. So what we're going to look is, we look for a form. Hold on. Let me use another color. So because there's nothing, so we're looking for a frequency, or a frequency. Or we're looking for a form. Or we're looking for a structure. or we're looking for a reference. Right? So what is also important is, and this is in our language, see there's all kinds of different fields taking place at that moment, is that when people talking to each other, talking to each other, it's also, what happens is they create space between the people who are having those conversations. Now, the question is now that we say obviously that each person has different experience, right? And most people like to carry those experience with them, either if it's positive or negative. And the thing is, if we create space in a discussion, in a dialogue, because that's actually how it functions. When people having a dialogue, one and one person, or two and two persons, three and it doesn't matter. When people having a dialogue, a conversation, a conversation, there has to be always at least two people, because only with two people you can create that space between those people, between these people. So now this space can be filled if there before there is no frequency, before we don't, because in space what we look first is we're looking for a signal, or we're looking for a form or a structure or a reference or frequency in that space. Now the other thing is, when people have a conversation, it is really important to undergoing an investigation. What is the motive, or what is the cause or reason to having this dialogue, this conversation? So, and that reasoning, that motive, that cause can be either negative or positive. So when that space is created between these people when they're having a dialogue or conversation, that space is filled either positive with a plus sign, or negative with a minus sign. So that space is filled either by positive or negative energy in that space. When people are having a dialogue, a conversation, or a debate, whatnot. So it's really important to investigate up front what are the motive, what is the reason, why is the cause to having this dialogue, this conversation, this debate, this etc. And it has to be always at least two, because the space can be created between two to having these conversations. So that space is filled either with positive or negative energy. A person can be angry and he expresses having a dialogue with another person, so he spreads in negative energy in this space, right? And the receiver who listens to this guy, to this person, receives this negativity. So either way, he experienced that negativity by himself in the past, and he neglects it. So he's like, oh, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to enter in this space and having a dialogue, conversation with this negative experience. Or if that person had never that experience, which could be also a positive position, that person might join in that space and talk with that person about the negative dialogue, conversation, right? Or the other way around, is there a positive discussion? It's really important if when you have a dialogue, and I think it's your right. It's your right when you're having a dialogue, a conversation, a debate, a dialectic with another person. It should be always, and those people who participate in those dialogues, conversations, debate, dialectic, they should know what the cause, the reason, or the motive is for that dialogue, conversation, right? That's the right. But that's also now my opinion. Now what I'm saying is that I think we should really, but that's the one I said before in the earlier minutes in this video is, I think, but that's only my theory. I have to investigate more, go deeper into it. That sound creates space. Sound creates space, and I think also that listening creates space in your. And by create space, I mean in your body, mind, soul, in the psychological field. It creates space. And space is, so to speak, the field, the theater where it all takes place, or the play field where everything takes place, right? So that's how you could see what space is. And I think there should be a rule or somehow a law that you shouldn't create space into a person for a now let me say carefully the right words. It should be normally like this. Let me make an example how it should be. Now I'm meeting a person, a friend, family member, co-worker, whatever. Before any dialogue should start, they should come together like this, and then it should be like this. I have something to say. Am I allowed to create space between you and me and the others, and having a dialogue, conversation about it? And the person should have to have right to say yes or no. Because, see, space is something invisible. It's you know, space is something invisible in the psychological field, in the mind. It's a tool. It's a playground. It's like a play field, like a chessboard or or basketball court or a whatever. It's the field. You know, those things has to be very sensitive and sensible approached when you create these fields, that space, in dialogues, in conversations, in debates, or when you have a speech, etc. Because it's very important that you investigated what is the reason, the cause, the motive behind having this dialogue now. Because if it's negative, the thing is this: if you put negativity in the space, I think it's really somehow it just popped in my head. It's really like those neurons and protons in the atoms. When I just look at a picture, it looks like this: the positive energy, the negative, and the another molecule I forgot. Because if you put negativity in this space, right? And this negativity is positive. This positive and negative is filling out that space. Now, when the person, let's say the person, his motive or his cause or his reason is is in a negative way, and for other person who hasn't experienced it or hasn't dealt with it now, I think we should not involve innocent persons in those things. I think I'm gonna make a third video about it because it's really complicated in the beginning, but it makes really sense after all. I think, but as I said, these are my investigations, my observations, and these are my theories. I don't say it is like this, or it is like, or it's not like this. Everybody should find out for themselves, but it's really important that people, I say that all the time, you have to investigate for yourself. Go yourself into it, you know, because mainstream is mainstream. You don't get no information over it. Mainstream is just the surface. Mainstream is always the surface, right? And let's say from now on, in 100 years, people are going to ask, well, how do you get all these informations from? The television told me it's like this and that. YouTube told me it's like this and that. Stuff like that. But the thing is, you have to read like really old books. And I know it's hard to find those old books, or it's hard to get, and but I know some of them you can find in eBay and stuff like that. But you have to really see the origin of a concept, and then it will be cultivated to the next generations, the next generation. But that's what I'm not focused on now. I'm talking about space today, and I will make a third video that is important. I think that listening is a function that opens space in your mind, in your thought, in a psychological field, and I also think that sound creates space. So, and I also think that when people are having a conversation, a dialogue, a debate, or a dialectic or a speech, they have to really investigate first what is the motive, what is the cause, what is the reason for having this dialogue, this conversation. And then another thing is also important, that you should have conversations to avoid in the very beginning positive or negative. A conversation should be diplomatic. No positive influence and no negative influence. But I will go deeper into it in the next video. So thanks for watching. I hope it helped a little bit. I will do a third video because it's gonna be a little bit deep, and I know it's just space, but space is something very interesting. Thank you for watching.